Welcome, dear students, to this class on Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold is a famous Victorian poet who wrote quite a number of poems. His collections, Empedocles on Etna and other poems, new poems, which was published in 1867, The Strayed Traveller and other poems, they were all very popular. And he wrote a verse tragedy, Merope. He is famous for essays like essays in criticism, culture and anarchy, literature and dogma. So he was a critic as well as a poet. And when we look into the Victorian poetry, we can say that it can be broadly divided into two. We have this high Victorian poetry and pre-Raphaelite poetry, which preceded the modern era in English poetry. So when we look at the first half of the Victorian era, where we have this high Victorian poets, we have Tennyson, Arnold, Hopkins and Browning. So we have learned poems by Browning, we have learned Hopkins, Tennyson. So you know the flavor of poetry of these poets. So there are certain common things among them. There are things that make them different. So we have Matthew Arnold and Tennyson, who were influenced by the Victorian dilemma, the storms of their age. They were, Tennyson was pessimistic. Tennyson was optimistic about the situation, while Arnold was pessimistic about the whole scenario. We have Hopkins, who resorted to God, to religion, to faith. And on the other hand, we have Browning, who was detached, who was not bothered by this conflict between science and faith. Coming to Arnold, we find that he was troubled by this loss of faith in his generation. So in his poetry, he talks about this loss of faith. He talks about the chaos and confusion of his mind, the doubts. There is this eternal note of sadness in his poems. When we learn this Victorian poetry, we need to look into these terms as well: Victorian complacency, Victorian dilemma, Victorian question. So that was an age torn between science and religion. Till then, people believed that man was a created being, but now with Darwin, man has become an evolved being. With Marxism, with Karl Marx's Marxism, man became a materialistic being, and with Freud, man became a sexual being. So there was this conflict between these new discoveries and the old faith they had in God. So this conflict is seen in the poems of Tennyson and especially Arnold. So in the poem Dover Beach, again, we find Arnold echoing the same confusion and chaos and trying to find solace in love in his wife. So this poem, Dover Beach, it was actually written shortly after a visit that he and his wife has made to the Dover region of southeastern England. And that is the setting of the poem, which was published in 1851. And he married his wife, sometime earlier in the same year, 1851. The town of Dover is closer to France than any other port city in England, No, so we have these reference to this French coast. The body of the water separating the coastline of the town from the coast of France is a strait Dover, the Strait Dover, and north of the English Channel and the south of the North Sea. So that is the setting. So we find the poet asking his wife to come to the window and enjoy this beauty of this French coast, this seashore. This When we look at the structure of this poem, we can see that it's a lyric poem. It's highly subjective, and it has got a rhyme scheme and a particular meter which reveals the poet's inner feelings, thoughts, to create, and it gives a single unique impression. He uses iambic pentameter. The poem has got four stanzas, and the theme in this poem is about this conflict between science and religion, doubt and hope. In Arnold's world of the mid 1800s, the pillar of faith supporting society was crumbling under the weight of scientific thinkers, such as the evolutionary theory of English physician, this Darwin. Then there were other philosophers as well who influenced this Arnold and also his generation. French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. The stance of God and the Christian beliefs were being doubted. As I have told you, till then people believed that God created Adam and Eve. But now this Darwin comes, and with the publication of Origin of Species, he says man is an evolved being. He has evolved from something. He was not a creator. He was not created by God. Arnold, who was deeply religious, lamented the dying of the light of faith, as symbolized by the light he sees in the Dover beach on the coast of France, which gleams one moment and is gone the next. Now, if you have visited the seashore, you find these towers, and there will be light, which gleams, which shines. So that is the setting. You see, the poet sees the waves of the shore, the beauty of the shore, the moon, blanched land, the light. So this is the setting. The white cliffs, which projects towards the sea, it is made of chalk or limestone, which erodes very easily. So likewise, the faith which was the faith that the people once had, it's fading away, it's eroding, like the cliff which is eroding. So it's about the eroding of the faith of this people. As I have told you, the strait which this poet is talking about, it's the Strait of Dover. So shall we see the poem? Could you please take the poem with you now? So, Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Olive from the long line of spray, where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return. Up the high strand begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence, slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. So this is the first stanza of the poem. This is how the poem begins. So, as I have told you, he has gone for honeymoon with his wife, and he is enjoying the beauty of the coast. And he asks his wife to join him to enjoy the fragrant night air. And then he talks about the overlooking cliffs, which are made of chalk and which can erode very easily, connecting it to the eroding of the faith. Then he talks about the water that reflects the image of the moon. Then he refers to the Strait of Dover. This clause represents a sense of rhythm on how the light blinks on and off, and also emphasize the theme of dying faith. Like this light of fades. Faith also fades from the minds of the people. The very first stanza introduces this conflict between the sea and the land, between long held beliefs and challenges against them. The sea is calm tonight, so it may not be calm every day, but today it is calm. The tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits on the French coast. The light gleams and then it is gone. So, likewise, this light of faith gleams now and then, but it is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay, this peaceful bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night here, he addresses his wife. Only from long line of spray, where the sea meets moon-blanched land. Listen. So now he brings a very beautiful visual imagery. So just imagine the seashore, the waves coming, and while retreating, they take a few pebbles along with it. And when the waves come again, so those pebbles are thrown again to the shore. It's fling, it's as if these waves are flinging those same pebbles again to the shore, and then while retreating, it takes it back. So this sound is again repeated again and again. And then he says, and in that he can sense an eternal note of sadness, which other philosophers and writers felt and heard years before, like Sophocles, who wrote about this eternal sadness that he has seen, the human misery. So that is how he begins the poem. He talks about this conflict between faith and science. Then he refers to this Sophocles, this Greek tragedian, and he says he too has sensed this eternal sadness, note of sadness in sadness, and we can see it in the tragedies that he has written. That is the second stanza, where he alludes to Sophocles and the Aegean coast. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. Again, even not only Sophocles heard it from the Aegean coast, the Aegean Sea, the waves of that. Now it's the northern sea. In England, it's the northern sea. So he says, there is this reference to one play written by Sophocles, that is Antigone, a Greek play written by Sophocles, in which he says that gods can bring ruin upon people from one generation to the next. This eternal note of sadness that Sophocles long heard from the Aegean coast, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery, which he has wrote wonderfully well in his tragedies. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by the distant northern sea. The sound of the sea, the poet hears a sound that disturbs him, just as one heard by Sophocles. about the human misery. Then he moves on to talk about the dying faith that is the main theme of this poem. The third stanza begins with this reference to, it's a metaphor. He begins with this metaphor of a sea. The sea of faith was once too full, too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. So, in this stanza, he refers to the dying faith. The sea of faith was once so full, but now it's all gone. He addresses his wife and says that the faith has faded from this generation. Once this faith was so full, it covered the entire earth like a sea covers the earth. So just imagine this image, the metaphor that he uses. So we have this planet earth covered with water, but and likewise this humanity, mankind was covered with this sea of faith, but now it is retreating. The sea of faith is retreating. So what happens? The bare earth is being exposed. The image is that of a person covered with a mantle, some sort of blanket or a robe or dress, which was kept held together with a girdle. And when this girdle is loosened, what happens? This mantle falls. This dress falls, exposing the nakedness of that person. Likewise, the sea of faith, there was something that held this people together, this faith in God. So when it was loosened, like the mantle, like the retreating sea, what happened? The faith faded, and it exposed the shingles of the world. The ugliness, the human misery, everything is everything is exposed, because now the girdle is loosened. This sea of faith has retreated. So that is what he talks about in this stanza. He says, now that this sash or girdle is loosened, and the blanket, the mantle has fallen, exposing the nakedness of the world, of humanity. And then he moves on, addressing his wife, telling that they should stay faithful and preserve their faith in each other. Refers to the condition of earth and how there is nothing good left to guide them. There is no goodness, there is no hope that will take them forward. So let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help, nor pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. The allusion is to the Battle of Epirlo, a walled fortress near this country of Syracuse on the island of Greece, Sicily. In the fight, Athenians fought an army of Syracusans at night. Those people killing each other in the night. It is a darkling plain. The sun has set, the light has gone, the faith has gone. So people can't see each other, and they fight each other, confused, and the confused alarms, the chaos is heard. So like these ignorant armies clashing at night, no, people are left in chaos and confusion. So that is how the poem ends, you know. So now there is nothing that will lead us, you know, this world, this land of dreams cannot hold us together. The hope is gone, faith is gone. So let us be true to one another. There is no something, that is the only thing that we can take resort to. He finds solace in love, in the love of from the love of his wife. No, the poem is very beautifully molded with very beautiful visual imagery, metaphors, and similes. He uses certain military devices like assonance, for example, tide and lies. He uses paradox and hyperbole. You know, the grating sound of the pebbles. You know, it is an example of hyperbole. Then, metaphor, the sea of faith, how he compares this faith to the water, to the ocean. Then he uses other similes like the sea of faith lay like a folds of bright girdle furled. Now he uses like to compare the sea to a girdle or a belt. Breath of night wind, comparison of the wind to a living thing. No, it's a personification. Human attributes are being given to the night wind, the breath of night wind. Then he uses anaphora, so various, so beautiful, so new, nor love, nor light, nor peace. You know, these are all examples of anaphora. So the poem is very beautiful. It is highly subjective. It's an example of lyric poetry, in which he talks about his confusion, his doubts about science, and I mean he talks about this conflict between science and religion, how people lost faith, and he says, you know, there is nothing more this world can offer apart from faith. So if there is no faith and hope, there is nothing that can hold you together. There is nothing that that is there to take you forward in life. So let's be true, faithful to one another. That's the only thing that we can take resort to. So this is how the poem ends. Hope the poem is clear to you. Please read the poem once or twice, and and if you have any doubts, let me know. So Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. So we'll wind up after reading the poem for once. Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. The sea is calm tonight, the tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand. Begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Allah, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Thank you.